assess the impact. And for that, we created the Impact Assessment Toolkit. Our toolkit helps politicians and regulators, technologists, and internet users analyze how decisions, tendencies, and policies may affect the internet. Any person can use this toolkit to assess in detail and explain how a regulation or a law may have a positive or a negative impact on the critical properties of the internet and on the internet way of networking. The toolkit is a defense mechanism that helps advocate and educate for the different things that make internet successful, and it helps us ensure that the network can reach its maximum potential. So, what is the toolkit? Well, there are multiple tools that are existent and they can be used, but the toolkit is always growing, especially with the help of our community. Now, this toolkit is a collection of documents that can help decision makers, technologists, and internet users in their efforts to protect the things that make internet work for everyone. Here you see that there are multiple concepts for the internet way of networking. You also have case studies, examples of threats to the internet. You have a guiding questionnaire, promotional videos, and many other materials that are easy for you to start carrying out an impact assessment or for you to carry out a detailed research on the subject. Now, it is very important that you remember that regulating the internet is not bad or good. We know that regulators are trying to create and design regulations to protect us and take care of us. But as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, sometimes certain actions and certain policies that are well-intended might have negative impacts that were not foreseen. So the toolkit helps internet society and our community take care of the community, provide good advice and good input as to whether or not a proposal for a regulation is good or bad or might affect the internet in a negative way. Apart from that, those tools help policymakers and other stakeholders within the ecosystem make smart decisions for the internet. Their use guarantees a level of precaution and due diligence so that certain public policies and regulations or actions of operators don't hinder the internet. And now, Diego, you have the floor.
Gracias, Katie,
Okay, thank you, Katie, for your presentation about the internet way of networking and about the impact assessment toolkit. And thank you for delivering your first presentation in Spanish. I think it's great that you try to speak in Spanish all the time. Now, good afternoon, everyone. My dear friends from our Spanish-speaking community, I am Diego Canavarro. I am the Public Policies Manager for Internet Society for Latin America and the Caribbean, and I work together with Katie on this project called the Internet Way of Networking. Katie just shared with us details and information about the critical properties of the internet, about what are the details of this impact assessment toolkit that we have for the internet. And I did share with you the link there in the chat box so you can check it. And what we want to share with you today is that this set of documents, that the foundation, the internet way of networking, created to describe the ideal critical properties of internet in its most abstract design, do not necessarily deal with all the important additional things that are important to keep internet open, globally connected, secure, and reliable. That is, we ourselves, as members of this project, are working on an expanded framework that might help us understand what are the things that go beyond the technical design, that go beyond the critical and essential properties of the internet. What are those things that help make internet be as open as possible, as more globally available as possible, as safe as possible, and as reliable as possible in every nook and cranny of the world? We are trying to identify what those elements are that facilitate or that undermine the openness, interconnection, the reliability of the internet, and the trust that users place on the internet. Because the trust that users place on the internet does not necessarily connect to the design of the internet, but it has more to do with the practices of operators, with the technologies that are placed in the configuration of internet equipment. It has to do with the use of advanced protocols to protect routing security, etc., etc. And that is why we wanted to tell you that in the next few months, in the Q3 for 2021, we will be publishing a new document, and we will ask for your opinion in a process of policy making that has a consultation stage with regards to what are the facilitating elements for an open, globally connected, secure, and reliable internet for everyone. That is, in 2020, we explained in the set of documents that Katie was mentioning what were the technical characteristics, the functional characteristics that make internet exist. This year, the project is now focusing on the set of features or the set of things that you can add to the structure, the infrastructure of the internet, to guarantee that this infrastructure is open, is globally connected and available, it is secure, and it is a reliable infrastructure for all users, whether they're individual users, corporate users. And obviously, one thing that we know from the get-go is that using the toolkit is complex, especially for those people and for members of our community that do not have a technical background, that don't know how routing is organized, that don't know how the number identification system works, that is the IP addresses and the ASNs, domain names. We're talking about people who perhaps are not that close to issues with IP protocols and so on and so forth. And it's because of that the project is designing activities for capacity building within our communities. For May, I'm sorry, just now we have a guide available in our website that can help you identify use cases, topics, practices of local operators, topics on public policies from governments that might help you identify if there is room for you to use the impact assessment toolkit in your own countries. And we will be sharing the link of this questionnaire. We're going to be asking you things. For example, the event, the fact, the policy, the law that is being developed in your country. Do you think, does it discuss intermediary liability for the internet? Does it discuss obligations of ISPs to store data of their users within the territory of their own country? Are there any obligations for ISPs to filter content, online gambling, child pornography, and so on and so forth? Do you think that this policy or this regulation by the regulator or these use and service terms of an operator might improve or decrease local connectivity? These are the kinds of questions that you will find in the guide that Katie just shared with you in the chat. So what you do is you answer these questions, and then by the end of the day, you basically know what might be the critical properties of the operation of the internet that might be affected if the government enacts a law, if operators continue carrying out specific practices that you yourselves have identified in your country. Beyond that, though, beyond this guide or this manual or this questionnaire that helps you identify if there is an aspect that requires and calls for an impact assessment, we will have a new training course specifically on the critical properties of the internet way of networking and on the use of the toolkit, and it will be available for all of you by May. So I believe we will be sharing over there the link in the chat box for you to find more information about that course that will be available by May. And this is something that I really suggest you look out for because it really helps you understand not just fundamental technical aspects of the internet, but also this idea as to how the impact assessment might be useful for us to promote our mission of guaranteeing that internet is open, globally connected, secure, and reliable for everyone. Leni, the link is in the chat box. And obviously, some of you, and I see here in the list of attendees, people that we know in the community, and I know that there are people here like Leah Solis, like Nairet, like Professor Flavio Wagner, who have experience with public policies, with the deployment of internet infrastructure in the countries where we have a presence. And we know that this toolkit needs to be expanded with new case studies, with new examples, with research on a particular specific law, policy, or tendency or trend being used by network operators in one country. So we do want to invite all of you, whether you have technical knowledge or not, but perhaps you can use those tools that we have in the toolkit to carry out your own analysis. It might be a 2-page document where you explain what the problem that you want to deal with in your country is, and how you analyze these things that are happening in your country with the support and the help of your toolkit. And I do want to say one more thing, and I think Katie will support me in my statement, which is that our staff, be it the Latin American, the Caribbean staff, be it the staff for our global project, is always available to talk to anyone who is interested in assessing whether a specific case or situation that is going on in your country might be useful for an impact assessment and might provide you with material to then talk to public policy makers, with businessmen in your country, with the civil society that is interested in defending an open internet, and so on and so forth. Beyond that, I think you all know our emails. You know, it's basically our last name at isoc.org. So if you see our name there in Internet Society and you want to talk to us, you can simply send an email to us as well. So we want to ask you that beyond our staff and beyond the members of our community, for you to take the material that we are sharing with you and we are developing and share them with authorities, share them with companies, share them with local stakeholders. And not just in a unilateral way saying, hey, look at what Internet Society and what we as members of the Internet Society, Colombia or Argentina are doing, but rather go and share the documents to ask for feedback so that they might tell us themselves, look, this toolkit might be improved if it discussed fake news, or this toolkit might be better if it explained to us in a clearer way how MANRS or how encryption connect or facilitate an internet that is more secure for people. And we have actually identified a set of things that we need to do to improve the documents that we are producing, but the internal feedback of our community and the external feedback that might come from people who might not pay any attention to the things that we are doing is also important as well. And it's important that each of you is prepared to work with those people who are not part of our organization so that they might help us in turn. And we can understand how we can produce materials that are more useful and more appropriate for people to discuss the internet ecosystem, just as we discuss the environment and deal with it in the same way. I mean, the impact assessments that we do in our cities when we're going to build a building, or when we're going to do an intervention in a rural area in our country, that kind of environmental impact assessment was developed in a very long time. So we as members of the Internet Society realized that it is significant for us to deal with the internet as a complex ecosystem, because as Katie said, a local intervention that doesn't look at the entire ecosystem might cause very complex problems for people that have nothing to do with the local problem in the first place. For geographical spaces that are not directly connected to this problem that is trying to be dealt with. And when we create a problem with such a big scale in a complex ecosystem as the internet that causes financial prejudices, it hinders the fundamental rights of people, and obviously it affects the technical stability of the system. Katie, next slide. And of course, we will have about half an hour now to talk about how to work, what questions you might have about the concepts, how we recommend you might look at the region. But we need your help. Basically, we need your help expanding the scope of the impact assessment toolkit. But in order for you to be able to explain what the internet way of networking is, what the toolkit is, I think we first need to be able to enroll in the training on the project that we will be setting up online in May 2021. I think Katie has already shared the link. And I am sure that this will be an excellent opportunity to learn more about this, to reflect on the critical properties and their uses, and obviously to help us know whether we are going on the right track with the things that we are proposing in these documents, in this impact assessment, in the case studies that we are sharing, in the impact assessments that have already been conducted in multiple spaces of our community too. But I also wanted to share with you other ideas of things that you can do to support the internet way of networking project. As you can see on the screen here, and then you can check the slides. But one thing you can do is share the resources with your followers in social media. You can share this material with influencers in the digital sphere of your country. You might reach professors and experts in universities. You can reach public officials or decision makers in the private sector of your countries to say, hey, Internet Society is doing this. Internet Society is proposing we carry out impact assessments such as these. And that's really helpful for us. It's helpful if you do that. It's helpful if you're able to identify the development of local policies or access of legislators that might have an impact on the internet. That's another helpful thing. We will only know whether these things will have a positive or negative impact on the internet when we actually set out to think and reflect on what the impact might be. Does this have an impact? Does it not have an impact? And that's another aspect and another initiative that you can work on. You can write down what the impact of a policy by X government might have on the internet, in your opinion. But that's something that you don't do on your own. You always need to talk to your peers. You need to talk to other stakeholders that are part of the surroundings of the internet, and that guarantees that knowledge is produced and shared in your country. And obviously, of course, it is possible that some of you who have a connection to local government, who might have a connection to representatives, legislators, CEOs from companies, who you might have a contact with NOGs or network operators, and you might share the toolkit with them and say, what's your opinion? How do you feel that you can appropriate and make this toolkit your own in order to adopt it as a preliminary stage prior to the decision-making process in your everyday work? So you can take the toolkit and promote this idea of carrying out an internet impact assessment and explain how a preliminary stage for anything you do with regards to the digital ecosystem is a victory. It's a win for the internet society. But then there are other practical things. You can present proposals. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. I'm sorry. In your national IGF, you can propose the topics, or you can propose something for the LAC IGF. You can propose having sessions on these materials in other events as well, and in other conferences and seminars that might deal with the internet. We have multiple seminars in the region, and the staff can help you identify those spaces. And obviously, there are many of you that are already working with ISPs, with governments, or with tech companies. So why not use this impact assessment toolkit in your everyday work? And just to give you an idea, and I'm sorry, move to the next slide, Katie, please. We have actually created a menu of activities that the participants of this event of ISOC fundamentals can carry out at the local level, which we believe might reinforce our campaign of promoting the internet way of networking and of dealing with the critical properties of the internet, and to work with a campaign for people to conduct an impact assessment on the things that they're doing, and for them to be concerned about the impact that they might have on the internet and on their own ecosystem. And this menu is available in the website that you can see here on the screen, and we can also share that link with you on the chat. And for you to get an idea of this, the Internet Way of Networking project is the one that has the most activities possible for you to carry out based on the multiple tools available in our menu. And I do want to encourage you to carry out one of these initiatives to support the Internet Way of Networking projects, the work that Katie and myself do every day. And of course, the mission of Internet Society to keep Internet a network as it is now, open, global, secure, and reliable for people regardless of where they are. And I think that that's basically what we wanted to share with you about the project, about our ideas, about our work plans for the next couple of months. And I do hope that our presentation has been useful. Both Katie and myself are here at your service for any comments or doubts that you might have, and not just today, though, for whatever you might need in the next few months in our activities. Thank you again, Nancy. Thank you again, Katie. And I do see that we have a couple of questions over there in the chat. Yes, there's a question, the Q&A, but it's a comment. Someone says it's asking whether or not the toolkit is in Spanish. Alfredo, we set up the questionnaire online very little time ago. So I think in the next few months, the team will be sharing the toolkit in Spanish to help our community. I think it's not just in Spanish, but also in French as well. This is the first question. Oh, wait, I see that we have 4 answered questions that were answered by Katie. So Alfredo, just so you know, we have the Internet Way of Networking Foundation in Spanish, and we have the toolkit, as Katie mentioned, in Spanish. The questionnaire will surely follow, and it will be translated into Spanish as well. And surely, Alfredo, when we have this, both Nancy and myself, who are closer to the LAC community, we'll be sharing this with the chapter leaders so that they can promote this material in the region. And not just in the region, but also in other spaces where we meet as well. I can see that there are comments in the chat. I don't know if you want me to read them or if you want to read them yourself. What I see in the chat are questions about the link. Oh, okay, right. Yeah, it's just that I think Rachel was saying that the topic is interesting, that she wants to specialize, that she will be checking things out. And I think next week we will have the links available for the course as well. Okay. There are people who are asking for the presentations. Nancy, if you can share them. Yes, after the session, we always share all the presentations. We will share the presentations for all the sessions that we had in ISOC Fundamentals. Yes, and another thing that I wanted to say, because someone asked a question about the course, because the course will be both in Spanish and in English, as Katie said, but we will also have the course in French. So if you want to practice your French, you can go ahead and do it in French too. And another thing that I did want to note is that beyond the concepts, beyond the critical properties that Katie was sharing, I would say that a part of us getting closer to more concrete aspects of the impact assessment toolkit are those things that we call use cases, which are basically documents that our staff produced and our team produced to document the use that we ourselves made out of that toolkit. And we have a use case of the toolkit to deal with routing. And in that space, we assessed the case of the Clean Network Act of the United States, the matter of routing in Russia and China. So there's really a lot of thematic, real life information there that help you understand in a more practical way how the critical properties are affected by things that governments are doing across the world. There's another aspect. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I going green? I'm sorry. So as I was saying, there are other aspects that have to do with intermediary liability, that is the obligations or the things that are being asked of ISPs or social network operators or operators of other applications. And we explain in what way or how asking a provider to filter content might undermine this idea of boundless internet. There's another use case that has to do with forced localization of data, right? This idea that it doesn't matter that we have a globally distributed network, because some governments are asking companies to store data at a local level or only to store local data. And that might be a problem. And this is a use case that presents examples of things that are going on in that area. And then we have other examples that have to do with blocking and filtering of services and applications. And Katie actually mentioned that. The case of WhatsApp was having issues with the Brazilian government because the Brazilian government wanted to ask WhatsApp to be blocked at the infrastructure level beyond causing prejudice to the users in Brazil. People in multiple other countries of the region that have nothing to do with Brazil, citizens that have nothing to do with the supposedly and allegedly illicit use of WhatsApp in Brazil, became affected by the mere fact that in our region, countries share infrastructure, and an intervention in the local networks of a country so big as Brazil might cause collateral effects and might hinder corporate clients of ISPs in Brazil who need that infrastructure in the country to set traffic to the internet. So these are things that are available in the materials that we have available to you online. And I'm sorry, I look like a mutant. I don't know what's going on with my camera and I get distracted. But as I was saying, these are the things that you can find in the materials that we have already developed and that we continue developing, not just at the internal level, but also with the help of our community and with our external allies. And we will continue growing this. The more people study these materials, make them their own, and look for capacity building to continue developing the toolkit. Carola, I think, is asking something. She's saying, I'm sorry, has that problem reached Zoom? Because that is one of the applications that has been the most used since 2020. Yes and no, I would say, Carola. Basically, what happened with Zoom is that they had a problem with the blocking of users in certain countries upon request of governments, or blocking users outside of those countries by request of governments. And if you want, I can share materials on this Zoom matter. We didn't study the case study of Zoom, and we didn't study how this intervention on Zoom to address the demands of certain governments to block users or activists and people might have had an impact on the operation of internet itself, or if it merely had an impact on the use of Zoom by these particular individuals. Because of course, there are multiple ways of doing filterings and blocks. And it's not necessary for something that happens specifically on Zoom might affect the internet. But obviously, it is something that you can study. And it is something that you can look at by using the toolkit, for sure. Nancy, do we have more questions? Well, there is someone who was asking about the course. They can only find it in English. I think it's because it's not ready yet. It's not available yet. The course itself is being developed in English. So there is a space on the website only for the version in English right now, but the details are being fine-tuned, they're being translated, and of course the members of our community will get a notification once the materials are available, once the course is available. But Carola, going back to you, the use of Zoom, as a tool for multiple activities of life in society does not necessarily correlate with the internet way of networking. Internet is an infrastructure over which anyone can develop services and applications, and those services have different characteristics. Those services have terms of use that are their own, and there are contracts and agreements that you access with and agree and come into with Zoom. And the practices and the policies and the activities developed by an ISP on the internet will definitely have an impact on this internet infrastructure. But that doesn't always happen. So let's imagine Zoom decides not to connect people from certain countries in the world or from certain places in the world. Okay, that might not affect the internet way of behaving and working because potentially the design of the internet remains the same. Nevertheless, that might bring issues with this notion of an open internet, or it might cause issues with regards to how much users trust internet or with the value that users see on the internet. So for us, it is important to continue talking about how these things might specifically affect this idea of sharing data packages from one point to another without obstacles, without the need of asking permission. A different problem, I think, would be, okay, I am a local government, and in my country, the users can't access Zoom, or in my country, data packages sent by this app cannot reach my country. Because that starts creating walls or frontiers or obstacles in a network that was created to have no boundaries in the first place. And this is a significant issue, and it's something that I would encourage you to continue researching, because any sort of limitation to access to protocols, any limitation to the multiple networks that are connected around our own network, making people not want to use the internet, are all things that can surely affect the internet being open, secure, globally connected, and reliable for everyone. There is a question that I can answer. It says, does enrolling for the IWN training a requisite for us as new leaders? No, not for new leaders. As a matter of fact, this training is not mandatory for anyone. The training on internet way of networking is just a benefit that we are offering all of our members so that they might share information on the IWN for anywhere they are. And so it's not mandatory. So even if your question has to do with this particular program, really what I would say is that if you want to move on to the second stage, which has to do with getting your certificate on internet way of networking for this session, you do have to carry out an initiative, which are the initiatives that Diego explained that you have over there on the screen. You need to select an initiative, execute your initiative, and then you need to report on your initiative using the link we shared with you so that we can validate that you conducted your initiative and provide a certificate for it. Yes, and Nancy, if I may say something, because I know we have 4 minutes left, but there is a topic over there that has to do with Venezuela that someone was asking, but I want to focus on the online course first. The online course is very fun. It has a part that is self-directed where students study on their own, but then each week the group of students meets live with a tutor. Generally, we're talking about dumb people such as myself who are there to talk about problems. So you're going to study the theory and about the use of the toolkits, and then you will get to a session to have a discussion about the Brazilian case or about the Venezuelan case and the fight between Facebook and Maduro that is threatening with a block on the entire set of applications for Facebook in Venezuela. Beyond these things, there are threats, as Gabriela is mentioning, with regards to undermining the connectivity and the infrastructure, as is the case in Venezuela. And if you want to look at these things in real time, and obviously this doesn't necessarily have so much to do with what we're talking about, but it does indirectly relate to the conversation, I want to share this platform with you. This is a platform from the Internet Society that helps us see in real time where we have internet shutdowns. And these internet shutdowns are indicative of the fact that at the local level, something is being done that might undermine this idea of an open global network that is available for everyone. If internet networks are not available for someone outside of Venezuela to reach the people and the companies that are located in that territory, and vice versa. That is, if the people who are there cannot reach other spaces and other servers and other computers outside of the country's territory, well, then we are running into a problem with the internet way of networking. And a big problem really is being created for us to have a web network that is not fragmented. Leah Solis makes a comment, but give me 1 minute. Every time we have 1 minute to finish, someone says something interesting, and I'm sorry, but Leah is talking about traffic prioritization, and that definitely connects to this idea of openness, that connects to this idea of not discriminating traffic when we are routing, this idea of not discriminating the resolution of DNS services. And that is obviously something that I, particularly in my knowledge and in my work, want to invite you to work with me to think about a case. And obviously, and to wrap up, this week, as members of the Internet Way of Networking project, together with our colleagues of the encryption project, are looking at something that is happening in Myanmar. Myanmar is a country in Asia where the government asked the 2 or 3 big local ISPs to use particular services, particular proxy services, and specific DNS resolution services to guarantee the control of data flow and to inspect data packages. So the government wants to do that. And this has to do with privacy, this has to do with confidentiality, but this also might break with this idea that any internet network can directly connect to whichever network it wants to without the need to go through a gatekeeper or a specific checkpoint from a government. And I say that to wrap up because it is significant and it's important for you to understand that the Internet Way of Networking project is not a project in isolation, but it's rather a project that basically connects to everything we do in internet society. It is like air, you know? It is the air around each of the other initiatives. The measurement project measures internet shutdowns, and internet shutdowns are an indication that there's a problem with the internet way of networking in a part of the planet. The encryption project has to do with security and user trust, and we know that this is something that might be facilitated or not depending on how operators use protocols and the interoperable building blocks of the internet. So what I want to encourage you to do is to keep working on this project and join in the internet way of networking. Because I would basically say that in my opinion, this is the project that reaches across all the other internet society projects. I don't know if that makes sense, Katie, Nancy, but I think that's the message. Yes, there's another question in the Q&A. Do these cases discussed from the perspective of freedom of expression might possibly lead to a court decision by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights? I hope one day this happens, and I hope one day the Inter-American Court of Human Rights might say how by evaluating the attitude of a Latin American or Caribbean government might have had an impact on the internet. I would like to hear a court say that they conducted an internet impact assessment and that impact that they found can be equivalent to an impact on the human right to be connected to the internet. I think it's, as you know, there is significant controversy with regards to whether or not there is a human right to be connected to the internet. We do know that there is a consensus with regards to how the right of being online and our life online should be protected in the same way that it is protected in our offline lives. And obviously, if anyone affects the internet way of networking, we are basically taking internet out of the equation, and we are acting as if internet does not exist. And if internet does not exist, we cannot exercise our human rights online. And I think that that's the gist of it. I would love for the Inter-American Human Rights Commission and all of the governments in the region to use the internet way of networking to carry out these impact assessments, because in my personal opinion, an impact on the correct operation of the internet based on this freedom of access to the internet and freedom of communication that, as Rachel in the chat is saying, is a human right, evidently affects the exercise and the protection of human rights. So really, These are all interconnected aspects. We are running late. I shared my email with you. We can continue talking about this later on, and we can talk about how we can see how the internet way of networking is important for us. Thank you very much, Theo. Thank you, everyone who joined in and attended the meeting. I think you wanted to continue having the conversation today, right? But we have run out of time. Anyway, we do want to leave space for that. Maybe we can discuss this later on. But I do think that this is an opportunity for us to analyze the context of your own countries. And perhaps discuss some of the cases that you have in mind, and that they might have a possible space for us to support you and carry out an initiative on the internet way of networking. Dale, you said something that is very important, Nancy. Some of you asked questions, and of course, this might be connected to the exercise of human rights, or this might undermine the exercise of human rights, or it might even be considered a hindrance of human rights. And what I would say is that what keeps the world going are exactly the questions that we posed. We have no useless questions. And we are here in a space where we want to experiment. And the useful questions are all the questions that are done, right? So I am here, Katie is here, we have all of our colleagues on the project, and we're always open to answering your questions. We want to try to find an answer for you. We want to listen to you, and then we want to keep the conversation going, because every question leads to a new answer, and that leads to a new question, and that's what keeps the ball rolling. Thank you. Yes, I fully agree with that. Okay, some people are asking for us to share the links and the emails. They're all there. Once again, I want to thank you all for your time. Thank you, Katie and Diego, for the amazing presentation. And thank you for all the excitement that you shared with the audience. It appears that everyone wants to keep talking today. And I think that we would definitely reach great ideas here. So we want to keep that in mind. We might have another conversation later on. And I want to say bye to everyone. I want to thank our incredible interpreter, Sol Limit, who helped us throughout the week of ISOC fundamentals. And once again, we want to ask you to continue being connected with us, continue helping us. We have a lot of work ahead, and we can only do it if we have a lot of hands on deck. So have a lovely afternoon, have a lovely night. We want to thank you for your interest and for all the work that you do every single day to reach our mission. Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye. Bye-bye.